Anxiety can strike at any time for absolutely no reason. Well, no, actually it can't, but it often feels like it does. We might be sitting on the sofa after a long day, just relaxing, and then suddenly it's there. Our heart is racing, or we start to feel dizzy, or maybe we just suddenly feel disassociated and not really there. So what's going on when we just suddenly feel anxious when we're not actually doing anything that should cause us to feel anxious? Are we just broken? Well, no, of course we're not, but let's talk about what actually is going on. Anxiety often seems like it can strike at any time for no particular reason, which can give us the impression that we're constantly vulnerable and have no control over how we feel. Finding ourselves suddenly feeling anxious in the most mundane and non-threatening situations only fuels this idea. But having worked one-to-one with anxiety clients for the last 15 years, I've learned that becoming anxious even as we switch off and start to relax is actually quite a common experience and isn't as sinister as it might have first seem. In this video, I'm going to explain 3 perfectly valid and completely benign reasons why we might sometimes start to feel anxious as we start to relax, and why understanding this ultimately leads us to getting control of that response. Okay, so it's no secret that your heart rate naturally slows as you start to relax. As we cease physical and mental activity, there's simply less need for our body to pump the blood to our muscles. All perfectly normal and healthy so far. This will of course be happening almost exclusively outside of our conscious awareness, as our body just does what it does. Most people won't even notice it. However, if our heart rate and muscle tension has become at some point in our life a cause for concern, perhaps we've experienced panic states or prolonged periods of high anxiety that included these physical sensations, then our mind now has a legitimate reason to monitor that and to sound the alarm when something about our physicality changes. The anxiety we feel as we sit down to relax is often our subconscious response to the perceived threat of a shift in our heart rate. That concern then creates the very thing we fear, a state of anxiety. Now, this isn't actually a threat, but it's important to remember that our mind is just doing what it deems important to keep us safe, and as such, isn't malfunctioning. It's just a slightly over-vigilant mind making a natural mistake based on past experiences. When we've suffered any extended periods of high anxiety, we very probably develop certain techniques to cope with our anxious thoughts. One of the most common coping strategies when it comes to anxiety is to constantly remain busy, so as to distract ourselves from whatever thoughts or situations seem to cause us to feel anxious. Whilst we're busy, we don't have to pay attention to bigger concerns or even to how we might feel, and we can thus divert our focus away from any of our associated indicators of anxiety. As soon as we stop doing that, a part of our mind hits that alarm bell, because now it perceives us as free to notice any anxiety or intrusive thoughts, which of course leaves us vulnerable. As a slight sidebar here, this is why anxiety tools and coping strategies can simply perpetuate a protracted period of high anxiety, because we obviously can't keep them up 24/7, and our perception is that as soon as we stop, now we once again become vulnerable. It's this concern that then creates the very anxiety we've been trying to avoid. We are in essence learning beings, and what this means is that we may well expect a situation we've been in before to reap a similar or identical experience. We naturally avoid situations where we've had a negative experience previously, and if we've felt anxiety in the past where we've tried to relax for either of the previously stated reasons, then our mind may have marked this activity with a red flag and decided that stopping and relaxing just leads to trouble. Not only has our mind learnt that relaxing causes anxiety, it's also very probably failed to completely understand why this might be the case, and as such leaves us without any strategy to prevent this happening in the future, except for simply avoiding that situation. Negative experiences of which we don't fully understand the cause inevitably leave us feeling out of control of whether or not that experience will repeat in the future. And once again, this uncertainty creates the very anxiety we're trying to avoid. So what can we do to change this and get back in control? Well, you may have noticed that in each of these 3 explanations, anxiety was only caused because anxiety was the thing we most feared. If we didn't fear feeling anxious, then there would be no problem because we wouldn't feel anxious about it potentially striking. As hard as it can be to get our head around, anxiety isn't something that strikes out of the blue. It's a feeling we create based on our understanding of this or an upcoming situation. And high anxiety, the kind we regard as disordered and inappropriate for our circumstances, is almost always created by the fear of feeling anxious. The good news is that in truth, there's nothing to fear from feeling anxious. Anxiety won't kill you, and whilst it can be unpleasant to experience, it's generally only unpleasant because we haven't deliberately chosen to experience that feeling. It's the lack of control we don't like. It's the confusion that causes what starts as concern to escalate into panic. The actual physical sensations, people deliberately create them every day. We exercise to increase our heart rate. Some people skydive or ride roller coasters to get excited and filled with adrenaline. Some of us watch horror films to deliberately feel the physical sensations that come with fear. None of these experiences lead to panic or uncontrolled anxiety, even though they create almost identical physical sensations, because we understand why we're feeling this way. When we watch a scary movie, we're shocked and we scream, our heart skips a beat and starts racing, and yet afterwards we laugh at our reaction because we understand why it occurred. So the fact that we now understand why we can suddenly feel anxious even when we're just sitting still doing nothing can also now be why we no longer need to fear that response. And ultimately, that can become why it stops. Understanding anxiety stops us fearing anxiety. When we no longer fear it, it no longer controls us. And if we treat any anxiety less as an attack and more of a free ride, it stops being something we need to avoid and simply becomes that roller coaster experience. It can sometimes be exciting, it can sometimes be unpleasant. It can have ups and downs. But we don't go into a panic state because we know the ride will pretty soon be over and we'll be alive at the end of it. But what do you think? Do these thoughts help? Let me know down in the comments. If you'd like to find out more about how we stop fearing anxiety, then take a look at this video here. Remember to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for weekly videos helping you get back in control of anxiety. I'm Tim Box. Always remember, be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.